My name is Joshua Gartrell. I'm a Program Integrity staff with the Developmental Disabilities Division. Welcome to the Developmental Disabilities Division training on notification of incident reporting. First of all, we want to go through all of the different components that are straightforward from the rule, and also try to cover some of the things that may cause some confusion along the way. First of all, who must report incidents to the division? All providers certified by the Developmental Disabilities Division are required to report incidents. Also, any staff person that is employed by one of these waiver providers is required to report. The requirements of reporting is a duty to report by law. It is in Wyoming State statute. It is also included in our rules in Chapter 45, Section 30. Also, CARF organizations have that requirement if you're accredited CARF organization. Lastly, CMS have requirements for the quality framework. The Adult Protective Service Act and the Child Protective Service Act are very similar in their language. Let me read the APS Act from Wyoming Statute, Section 35. Any person or agency who knows or has reasonable cause to believe that a vulnerable adult is being or has been abused, neglected, exploited, abandoned, or is committing self-neglect shall report the information immediately to a law enforcement agency or the Department of Family Services. CMS also has requirements according to their quality framework. They have desired outcomes, that participants are safe and secure in their homes and communities. The state of Wyoming, on an ongoing basis, will also seek to identify and address instances of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. The CARF requirement is found in Section 1E, and this is applicable for all those CARF accredited. The organization must have written procedures regarding critical incidents that include abuse and neglect. The leadership of the CARF organization also must annually have a written analysis that addresses the cause, trend, and prevention of occurrences. When are you required to report? Per the waiver rule, Chapter 45, reports shall be made immediately after assuring the health and safety of the participant and other individuals. The spirit of this rule is that you would first take care of the health and safety needs immediately aroused by that incident and all other participants that are involved. This should be reported, generally speaking, by the end of the business day or within 24 hours, but is immediately as soon as they are safe. How to report? The division has created a website that is secure that we ask that all providers and staff report on. You can look at the screen and find the web address, and it is located at the University of Wyoming. This online submission is something that we request that you do for a number of reasons. First, it is immediate. That report is immediately entered into a database live, and we are, as Program Integrity, immediately notified of all incidents. Someone at the Cheyenne site will ensure that all of the incidents are being reviewed by all field staff. This also avoids any fax that could be sent to Cheyenne if someone is traveling on the road or being put in the wrong person's box. And an incident, a very critical incident, could be neglected to be reviewed or notified through faxing. Also, as you know, different staffs with different cursive handwriting styles. After being faxed, that transmission could be very difficult to read, and errors could be made after reading a poorly written or illegible fax. Lastly, you must immediately have verification with an incident report through the tracking of an incident number. When you report online, you are immediately notified that you have successfully notified the division through an incident number that you have received. It is important to keep track of that number, and the next prompt of that screen will ask you if you would like to keep a copy for your own records. Program Integrity strongly encourages you to not only notify us through that same form, but also use that same form in notifying DFS, P&A, and other agencies as applicable. So that ensures that all agencies are being given the same information in the same manner. Finally, The database in which the incidents are tracked is something that the division will continue to monitor and improve on through our own tracking and analysis through quality assurance. The database submission has been updated through the latest security through the wind at the University of Wyoming. We just covered why you should report online, but if you do not have access to the internet, or for some reason the website is down or you're having problems with your internet connection, you still can submit an incident by a fax. You need to use the approved DD3 form, which you need to obtain a copy of, and fax that incident to the division at the number above. However, the best practice is to make sure and confirm that that fax went through, and one of your local staff program integrity persons can confirm that they've received that fax and the content of the information. Next, let's move on to the categories. What type of incidents do we require as the division to report to us? First of all is suspected abuse, suspected neglect, suspected exploitation, suspected abandonment, suspected self-neglect, police involvement, injury caused by restraint, serious injury, elopement, and death. Let's go over a couple of the things that confuse people. First of all, suspected abuse, neglect, exploitation, abandonment, or self-neglect. We especially want to emphasize that you should not be investigating the veracity of the truth or the allegation of these things. If it is a suspicion, or a participant voices that concern, or a family member, another provider, has a suspicion that these things have occurred, it is not your job as a provider to go out and confirm and factualize whether or not these events have taken place. Your first duty is to report. Let the appropriate jurisdiction and the appropriate state agency follow through with the investigation as they are allowed to do so. Secondly is police involvement. That also causes some confusion, as any time a participant has an interaction with a police officer or any law enforcement, you have a duty to let the division know. This includes police coming to a home, a group home, a private residence, out in the community, during a car accident, etc. Any type of interaction with a law enforcement, as it includes their official duties. Now, if they have a relative that happens to be a police officer. Lastly is serious injuries. This is the one that gets most confused, is any time a person has an injury that requires medical treatment from someone such as a doctor, a nurse, emergency room, you are required to notify the division. Lastly is the death information. Anytime a participant dies that is participating in the waiver, we require additional information. Some of that information is found on the web page when you submit your incident is a separate secondary pop-up window. If you are, again, not able to submit that information immediately at the time because you need to research and find some of the information as far as medical history, medications, etc., it is okay to notify the division subsequent after you have that information. Also, we do require a copy of the death certificate. We do realize that that does take time to obtain, and we want to be sensitive to families and staff that are going through a grief and a grieving process. We do want to allow you to have adequate time to obtain all this additional death information, but at some point it is required because we do have a biannual mortality review committee. This is chaired by the division, but has many members from different agencies reviewing deaths that occur on the waiver. Lastly, which agencies are you required to report to? First is the Developmental Disabilities Division. This is our rule according to Chapter 45, Section 30, and this process is outlined according to our rules. Secondly is DFS. They have a statutory right to be notified with cases of abuse and neglect, etc. Next is Protection and Advocacy. They're an agency that is a federally mandated agency that looks into things from a law enforcement and a legal standpoint, and they need to be notified as well. Next is your case manager. Every participant has a case manager, and every case manager needs to be notified of every incident. Some participants have guardians, some do not. If it applies, the guardian needs to be notified. Lastly it is appropriate at times to get law enforcement involved in certain cases of abuse, neglect, crimes being committed, sexual abuse, etc. Use your professional judgment and common sense, and coordinate with your local DFS office if you have questions about law enforcement needing to be involved. Of course, the division primarily is going to be focused on health and safety concerns. The focus is on assuring that appropriate and adequate services and supports are in place. Does this incident bring out new concerns that are not already addressed in the IPC or the behavior plan? Does someone start to exhibit new behaviors, aggressive behaviors, attacking persons or staff? Are there new elopement issues? Are there staffing ratios and staffing supports that need to be addressed? Also, does this incident correctly identify potential health and safety new issues such as a new seizure that has never occurred before, new mobility issues? The main question is the health and safety being assured, and how is the person doing today and following the incident? A second issue is, was the incident filed within the required time frames? The requirement is that the incident must be filed as soon as health and safety has been assured. If it has been determined that a reportable incident occurred but was not reported within this time frame, we will notify you and inform you of that requirement. We also will ask you, if you know ahead of time that you're not able to submit an IR, to let us know what is going on and the reasons for the delay in the submission of the incident. Systemic lapses between notifying the division and the occurrence of the IR can become a certification concern. Another thing to focus on is there enough details in the description of the incident. Many incidents reports need follow-up by program integrity simply because we do not have all the facts or we do not understand the narrative that has been written. Please let us know the who, the what, the where, the why. Try to avoid using personal pronouns. Try to use the proper names and or the staff's title or description as you are composing the narrative. You should write the narrative as if we do not know the persons involved or the situation that occurred. Try to be descriptive and paint a picture of what has happened. Do not use hyperbole, exaggerations, or draw wild conclusions, but simply try to state the facts that you have observed. What are some things to look for to make a good narrative? First of all, the first narrative should describe the preceding events that happened right before the criteria was met for the incident. For example, Bob said that he was in a hurry to leave Dahab. John, the staff, was assisting another participant into her wheelchair. Bob left the house alone to get into the van. We didn't need to know the name of the second participant as it didn't apply to the report for Bob. Next is the section where you give us a description of the factual event. For example, Bob slipped on the ice in the driveway. Bob fell and broke his wrist while walking to the van at approximately 9 a.m. Staff, Tina, contacted nursing immediately, and Bob was taken to the ER at 9:20 a.m., where his wrist was put into a cast. Bob was then released to go home at 11 o'clock a.m. with 1 week of pain medication, Percocet, and directions for care of the cast. Next, you need to put in the narrative what follow-up action has been or should be taken. For instance, in Bob's case, all staff in this home are being trained on the care of Bob's cast, and nursing has added the pain medication to his schedule. Bob did not have appropriate shoes on for the ice. Bob and all of his staff are being trained on appropriate footwear for winter weather. Bob is currently resting comfortably at home. Try to stick to the facts, what you know, and try to explain as best as you're able as if we do not know the situation. Let's go through a couple scenarios and a couple examples, and we'll ask, does this meet the division's requirement of a notification of incident? If so, which category does it fall under? First, scenario number 1. A participant tends to wander at night. In order to prevent this, the night staff decides to place a chair up against the person's door to prevent him from getting out. The staff is usually within earshot of the door so that if the person tries to get out, the staff can intervene. Is this a reportable incident? Yes, it is. What category does it fall under? Suspected abuse. Scenario number 2. A participant was cooking and inadvertently caused a small fire in the kitchen. The fire department, EMS, and the sheriff all responded to the 911 call, as was protocol for that community. Is this a reportable incident? Yes. Which category does it fall under? Police involvement. Scenario number 3. A participant has a seizure, falls, and gets cut on the head. Nursing asks staff to take her to the ER as a precaution. The doctor uses medical adhesive to close the wound. Is this a reportable incident? Yes. Which category? Serious injury. Scenario number 4. A participant needs repositioning every 2 hours as ordered by the doctor and outlined in the schedule. Staff does not reposition the person for several days. This results in skin breakdown that gets infected. Is this a reportable incident? Yes. Which category? Suspected neglect. Scenario number 5. A participant is eating dinner, makes a choking sound, and then vomits. Staff notice the participant has a slight temperature, so staff decide to play it safe and have the ER look at them. The ER diagnoses the participant as having a stomach virus. Is this a reportable incident? No, because any illness is not a reportable category, and that is an often confused one with the serious injury category. Thank you very much for participating in our training on notification of incident as required by the Developmental Disabilities Division. If you have further questions about the notification of incident, please refer to our rules and regulations. You can find those on the Secretary of State's website listed here. Follow these directions and type in Chapter 45.